We talked to a security and threat risk expert, Willem Els, who is with the Institute for Security Studies, to share what typically happens in scenarios of this nature and what action should be taken to assess and manage situations like these. Willem, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. How does a security analyst like yourself evaluate this development and the implied risk to the individual and the office she represents?
Good evening, Iman. What you have to do, you have to look at the bigger picture at first, and we see that this typically derives from the state capture that has been investigated over the past few years by the Zondo Commission, where also certain people have been exposed with recommendations also by the Commission that they be further investigated. So that net is closing around this criminal network that involves the state capture. So what we see here is maybe that they are starting to become desperate, and therefore they started with this threat. So this threat, of course, like a bomb threat, it should always be taken seriously. It should be investigated. And in order to really investigate a threat like this, and to take it seriously is from your state security agencies, and more in particular your Hawks, to investigate it thoroughly, that the manpower and the resources be released in order to do a proper investigation. With the evidence at hand, it should not be that impossible to really arraign these perpetrators based on the physical evidence of the letter.
And that's actually what I wanted to ask you about. So either you open your mailbox or you're given an envelope with this information. Of course, the first question is, what should anyone in this situation do? But going to the point you're raising now about the material evidence, how do you go about, collecting that? And how closely would you scrutinize the bullets and the paper and so on? Just take us into an understanding of that protocol or that process that happens.
Okay. Now, in terms when in the detective services investigation, you've got a principle known as a lockout principle that determines that everything and everyone leaves a trace. So there must be traces, either on the paper, with the typing, with the ink, with so many things that can be forensically analyzed, as well as with a bullet that could be examined. There might be DNA, there might be some fingerprinting, etc., that can be picked up. So should you actually come across something like this, of course, the good advice will be to handle it as little as possible in order not to destroy some of the evidence that might be on that letter or the bullet. And then also now from the police's perspective, it is very important that they release enough resources and manpower, because in South Africa we do have the expertise to solve cases like this. And if they really do their jobs thoroughly and they allocate these people to do that, also one thing that is very important, with no or very minimal political interference, to allow the law to take its route and to bring these criminals to bank.
Willem, you sort of intimated that, isolating the person or persons responsible for this is, it's realistically within the ambit of the state security agencies. One would imagine that they've got these, superior techniques. I mean, I'm just speculating here, because in other areas we would say, we're found wanting. But without giving away, techniques or, or kind of making the criminals smart, you believe that it is likely, given what they have at their disposal, to locate the perpetrator or perpetrators?
Most likely, yes. With thorough investigation, they should pick up some leads that will also, it's not only the physical evidence that they find here, it's also the circumstantial evidence and further investigations that will be taken into account. And so what we are saying here is that the resources is important. You cannot allocate one or two people to investigate. You have to establish a task team of all the different disciplines, and you have to empower them with all the resources that they need. And then there is no excuse that we won't have an arrest in this criminal network.
In your experience, I mean, is the fact that this letter was riddled with errors a ploy perhaps to try and conceal the potential identity of those involved?
Yes, criminals like these, they normally make use of different techniques to try to conceal it from where they are coming. But, with technology that is developing so fast, the technology on the state side, on the investigative side, is just so powerful that it is very, very difficult and even impossible to really circumvent it with the correct investigation and the correct techniques being applied.
Just to go back, and perhaps in closing, Willem, there's a lot of chatter around this. People on social media all have their theories about, whether this is true, whether it's not true, whether this is a manufactured threat to, distract the public from other issues relating to the presidency directly. But given the context of South Africa, which you alluded to a little bit earlier on, the high-stakes game that is being played in terms of the state capture report and the people that are identified or were likely to face punishment, this is something to be taken very seriously, especially also with the deaths of certain people who have been whistleblowers. Yes,
indeed so. If you look at the letter, you will see that they actually have two demands. First, that the suspect or suspects in the death of Deokaran that have been a whistleblower that was murdered be released, as also that they cease with the investigation in the state capture. So there they give it away themselves, where they're coming from and what their objectives are with this letter. So now, if you look at this letter and you look at the background that you just mentioned, it just demonstrates to us how deep the state capture really runs and how vast this criminal network of organized crime has perpetrated and infiltrated our echelons here.
Very concerning all round. Willem Els, thank you for sharing your expertise with us. We appreciate it. Willem is with the Institute for Security Studies.